Hello and welcome back to another episode. So this one's about, well, it's a bit of work ahead of tomorrow's MOT, the pre-MOT or the first MOT I'm calling it, because it will fail. I think it's going to fail on the rust in the sills, particularly because they're quite close to a structural part, the jacking up point for the car. So I think it's going to fail on that anyway, but it will fail on something else. And a very keen eagle-eyed viewer noticed this in the subframe refit video. Philip, you got in touch and you noticed that while I had the steering column disconnected, I may have moved it around a couple too many times while it was spinning freely. Behind the steering wheel is what's called a rotary coupler, and that connects things like the horn and the airbag to the rest of the wiring loom. And that's designed to turn a couple of times with the steering wheel and stay connected. But if you go too far, then it can damage that connection and snap it. So I think that's what's happened because my horn doesn't work and the airbag light is on. So well done, Philip, for spotting that. So I've got a second-hand part and I'm hoping to fit that this evening ahead of tomorrow's MOT, because it's just another thing that needs to be done and it's another failure that I just want to get out of the way, because you never know, it might pass. Let's get into it. Right, so I think it's quite a straightforward process. So there's a couple of screws, torque screws around the back of the steering wheel. Undo those, release the centre part, that's the airbag. Remove these two horn buttons so that the wiring can be fed through the steering wheel later. Once that's been exposed and disconnected all the wiring, there's a centre nut which you undo, and that should release the steering wheel. There should be a couple of screws that hold this cowl on here, and that's where the rotor coupler is, to take that off. And then there's about 4 screws that hold the rotary coupler on, so it should be straightforward enough. So the first 2 screws I'm going to take out are Torx ones around the back of the steering wheel to release the airbag, and I'm using a T27 on these. I have straightened up the steering wheel. I've not locked it off. Might be better off doing that, but I'm not. Oh, I have disconnected the battery, by the way, because the last thing you want is the airbag going off in your face prematurely. So just behind here we've got the one connector into the airbag, which looks like that just pulls off. Yep. So I'm going to place the airbag face down, just because if it's, face up, because if it's face down and it goes off, then it becomes a projectile. So next I need to remove the horn buttons, because the wiring connects to the back of the horn, these red and black wires, and they need to come off before they can be fed through, so the steering wheel can be brought off. So that's one of them loose. Just behind there's a couple of spade connectors that connect onto the back of there. Looks like red on the top, black on the bottom, so I'm just going to push them off. Just like that. Right, so these wires can be now brought back through. So now we've got the connector to undo that goes to the horns. That's just press and pull. Put that to one side. Now I need to release this nut here, so that the steering wheel can come off. Right, so I'm going to be using a 21mm socket on the impact driver to take this off. But before I do, I'm going to mark the not the nut itself, but the shaft bit, so, and also the steering wheel, so I know exactly where they were. So I'm just going to mark the left-hand side here, and then mark the left-hand side just here, so I know where the steering wheel was in relation to the steering column when it goes back on. Right, so let's have a look. Right, so this is the replacement part, also from an MG TF. So let's check the part number. So YRC 100-300, YRC 100-300. So they are the correct parts, but there's a little indicator just here, and that's currently white. And as this turns around, if you imagine a ribbon in here, a coil of ribbon, as this turns around, when it gets too far, and you can see that when it gets too far, that little indicator disappears, and that lets you know that you're no longer in the middle and you're heading towards the end. As I go back, that indicator comes back, and on this one, it's showing as well. It's all the way off. What's interesting is that that's actually now come back. But anyway, I think the ribbon in here has just gone way beyond where it's supposed to go, and that is broke. So on here, I've got 4 sort of Phillips screws that hold it to the indicator stalk, or cowl, whatever you want to call it. But I can't get at them here, so I need to take apart this sort of section here so I can get at the screws. So it looks as if there's 2 posi-drive screws just underneath here. And I don't think I need to take that any more off than what it is, because I can get access to it. So 4 screws here, and that should pull that off. There is a connector going into the back on this side though. That needs to be disconnected, so I'm going to do that first. So actually it's not 1 connector, it's 2. There's a white one and then the yellow one, which I imagine is probably airbag and horn. So they are disconnected. So that should just pull off now. There we go. 1 rotary coupler. So I think these are also called a clock spring as well. I've heard them referred to as that. So that's the Duff one, I'm thinking. Just need to take this one off. Right, so when this goes back on, it's pretty vital that this is in the centre. So as you can see, when I turn that to the top, that little dial indicator thing is gone. So I know that's too far one way. So that's 1 rotation back and it's in the middle. If I go another rotation, it starts to disappear again. So I suspect that that's where it needs to be. I mean, if this goes on wrong, if this isn't in the correct position, when I come to do a full lock either one way or the other, it's just going to break it again and I'll lose the horn and the airbag, so I'll know. Hopefully that won't be the case. Okay, so in with the connectors. So I'm going to do airbag first, yellow one, then the horn. Okay, right, so I'm going to put the cowl back. So right, I'm back on with the steering wheel, so I need to be careful. I need to feed this wire through first for the airbag. There we go. So I can see my marks, steering column. On the other side there, the steering wheel. Get my nut. Feed through the wires on the left hand side, the double ones for the horn button on the left. I'm going to actually wait. I'm going to put the horn button back on first, just while they've got the slack. So, connect the horn. Yep. I have to reconnect the airbag. And then it's just the 2 torque screws in the back. Right, so that's the airbag on. So I'm now going to reconnect the battery and give the horn a go. I'll probably even start it actually, why not? And see if the SRS warning lights disappeared. Right, so I've reconnected the battery. Horn. Ooh. So it works on both sides, that's a positive sign. Let's start it and see if the light goes out. Will it start? Yes. So I've got no warning lights on the dash now, so that is a win. Now, if I've got that clock spring in the wrong position, as soon as I go too far left lock, too far right lock, it's going to break it. But hopefully it's in the right position and that'll be just fine. So I'm going to pick this up tomorrow morning just before we go for the MOT. So I will see you then. First drive, wow! Hopefully I like it.